Welcome everyone to another segment of Burn Coverage, Week 13, Wide Receiver Edition. I'm your host, Curtis.
And I'm Joel.
And Joel, why don't you just lead us off with some of your great picks here for the
All right, I'm going to go with my favorite. I'm gonna give a bit of a teaser because I am going to pick the LSU receiving core this week in most of my lineups. But I'm going to start with the better of the receivers of that LSU non-championship winning team, and that is Jarvis Landry. Absolutely. Miami Dolphins, he's going up against the Baltimore Ravens this week. So last week he had the game of his short career. He caught 13 of 16 targets for 165 yards and a touchdown against the New York Jets secondary. And Baltimore is giving up the fourth most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. And you know what? Miami has no other wide receivers right now. Rashard Matthews is out this week. They have no running game because Lamar Miller sucks. He is a terrible football player. And as we all know, they fired their offense coordinator, Bill Lazor, formerly of Philadelphia Eagles quarterback coach fame. There's my Philadelphia plug for the week.
Lasers.
Bill Lazor. Now they promoted their quarterback coach Zach Taylor to offensive coordinator. This is going to be the Jarvis Landry show. And you know what the Baltimore Ravens do? They do not, or you know what they don't do? They don't play defense against the deep ball. This is going to be a Jarvis Landry game. They have no running game to speak of. My left side of the couch here is a big proponent of Ryan Tannehill this week. You know who's going to catch all those balls that Ryan Tannehill is going to throw? It's going to be Jarvis Landry. 6,700 on DraftKings, 7,400 on the duel. He is the offensive weapon of the Miami Dolphins.
And I'm all for Jarvis Landry, somebody I picked, and I bequeathed him to you so you can have somebody to talk about. You didn't have anybody ready. But you're trumpeting him for a lot of the wrong reasons. Jarvis Landry's never been a deep threat, first of all. He's their possession receiver.
Yep.
So that's not going to be a big part of their game. And the Dolphins offense, I know they just changed their offense coordinator, so maybe we don't know. But they do a slightly gimmicky offense, which includes a lot of short passes, which is where Jarvis Landry thrives. And I don't think they're going to get away from short passes and throwing to Jarvis Landry, who's obviously been a great find for this Dolphins offense the past 2 years. However, to say they don't have any other wide receivers or any running game is kind of a farce. I know Lamar Miller's not setting the world on fire. He has had a few good games. However, he's actually effective in the passing game, as is Devontae Parker, their first-round pick, who was hobbled by injury and coming on recently. They also still have Kenny Stills, who's dealt with his own issues, but he should be playing this week. And they still have Jordan Cameron. So they do have targets to throw to. None of this is bad for Jarvis Landry. All I'm saying is that you're gonna say that it's going to be just the Jarvis Landry show, and it may well be, but there are other people that the defense needs to pay attention to. They can't just focus their attention on Jarvis Landry. So, in that case, I think Jarvis Landry is still going to get his catches. I'm agreeing by disagreeing here. Still going to get his catches. Still going to get his targets. I mean, there's nothing to say that he won't get his targets, especially against a very porous Baltimore defense, who, as I said with Tannehill, was giving up receptions to whoever was getting the ball last week against the Browns. Barnidge had a decent game. Travis Benjamin had a decent game. Brian Hartline had a decent game. Yes, exactly. Unfortunately, I've watched Browns games. And Jarvis Landry is a better receiver than all three of those players combined. So, I love Jarvis Landry this week, especially the fact that earlier in the week, I know a lot of people do their lineups at the end, but he was questionable, and people are like, oh, maybe I don't want to play him. Bad luck for that, because Jarvis Landry is going to have a huge game. Expect 15 targets, no doubt, and at least 10 catches. And I wouldn't be surprised. And he's always the kick return threat, so there's always that little nugget there too. He's also a rushing threat. They do one or two handoffs games to him too, which he's scored on this year. So
always a couple with him in the playbook every week.
He's their biggest playmaker.
He's their best running back.
He's kind of like a hybrid. It's like Wes Welker and Antonio Brown had a baby, and he got he's like not as great a receiver as Wes Welker in his prime, but not as great of a deep threat as Antonio Brown, but can still make it happen.
I think he's a better receiver than Wes Welker ever was. And so it's the wide receiver segment, so I'll talk about Lamar Miller. Lamar Miller had 8 rushing yards last week. They have absolutely no running game. They're going to be forced to throw it. Devontae Parker, who? No, thank you. Jordan Matthews, if you breathe on him, he will hurt his hamstring. No. It's
Matthews?
I mean, Jordan Cameron.
Yeah, a little slip of the tongue there. Hey, poor Eagles fan.
All the Matthews are hurt this week. So yeah.
On your team.
No, on every Matthews in the NFL is hurt this week. Official.
Sad weeks. I'm so sorry. Yes, Jarvis Landry. Good.
Yes.
Good job, Joel.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It wouldn't be bird coverage if I didn't trumpet a Jacksonville Jaguar, so might as well trumpet a Jacksonville Jaguar. And this week, Jaguar. And Allen Robinson is that Jacksonville player of note this week. DraftKings 7,300 and FanDuel 8,000. Wow, big prices for a guy at the beginning of the year that people didn't know who the fuck he was. In fact, our opening commercial for this show was, who the fuck is Allen Robinson? I'll tell you who the fuck Allen Robinson is. So, week 1, I was trying to tell you about Allen Robinson. Now you know who the fuck Allen Robinson is, because he's broke out into a potential star in this NFL. Yes, he is playing this week against Tennessee, which is 7th against receivers. Oh, I know, everybody's really afraid of Tennessee. It's not necessarily that their corner play is good. Their corner play is decent, don't get me wrong. But it's that there's a lot of blitzes being thrown at the quarterbacks. However, Allen Robinson is a possession receiver, so he will get short passes thrown to him, which is great in leagues such as DraftKings, where you're getting PPR. And they do have another good wide receiver in Allen Hurns, who's also been a favorite of the couch, especially this side of the couch. I know Joel has him in his league of note as well. Unfortunately, Allen Hurns will not be playing this week due to concussion protocol, so that means even more targets for Allen Robinson. Yes, I think Julius Thomas will actually get a few more too. He had a great game last week. Nothing wrong with that. But you only have really 2 players here. They're saying Marquise Lee might start. Yes, that Marquise Lee that you've never heard of. Also, Ace Sanders is still in the mix. What? I don't know. Also, some little white guy I don't know too. So, Brian Walters. Sorry, I recommended him once. So, yes, Allen Robinson is a stud wide receiver in this league. Get used to it. Blake Bortles is an emerging quarterback. Allen Robinson is 10th in the NFL in targets. And the Jacksonville defense is awful. So that means they're going to be throwing against a Tennessee, because Tennessee and Marcus Mariota will put up points. Delaney Walker is going to get his, and Kendall Wright, and they always find a way. Mariota finds a way to get his team on the board. That means Jacksonville is going to have to push the ball down the field. I expect Allen Robinson to have a very good game.
Very good game. I like Allen Robinson a lot. I just don't know if I like him this week. I think Julius Thomas is going to be the beneficiary of Allen Hurns being out. I don't like him enough to advocate him in your lineups this week, but I think he's going to be the one who gets the targets just because everyone knows about Allen Robinson. Everyone knows about Julius Thomas, but Julius Thomas has been hobbled with injuries.
Everybody knows about Jarvis Landry.
Yeah.
I mean, what are you gonna... This is the same thing, except Allen Robinson can break a big
better
run.
wide receiver than Allen Robinson. Come on now.
Maybe possession, but Allen Robinson's more of a deep threat.
No, more of a deep threat, but that means nothing. And we're talking about a
That
tall
means
wide receiver.
nothing.
That means nothing.
Yeah, one 80-yard catch isn't as good as 5.
As 13 for 165. You're right. It's not. That's very simple math. Thank you for
Jarvis.
pointing that out.
Yes, I know. We're playing last week, Joel, as you always like to do. But yes, Jarvis Landry did have a career game last week.
He's only been in the league 2 years.
You
He's
are.
going to have a lot of career games.
And Allen Robinson has been in the league 12 years. Come on, this is his second year.
It seems like he's been in the league 12 years.
Well, it was supposed to be. Let's just be.
He's
more
been
I talk about it.
It feels like he's been mentioned on this show for 12 years.
Might as well just have a big Jaguar thing back here. But the thing, and all joking aside, is that when we started the year, all the Jaguars are cheap. Bortles, Allen Robinson, Alan Hearns, and Julius Thomas. I mean, he started injured, but they're all like bottom barrel guys, and now they're all like mid to high range players. So it's something that we've been talking about. Both of us have advocated at a time for Jaguars players. I think actually all three of these players that we're talking about. I also TJ Yeldon, for better or for worse.
I've never advocated TJ Yeldon on this show, and I never will, and that is for you, my friends.
but they are. I hate to use the word explosive, but they do put points on the board.
They are a much better offense than I think anyone anticipated. I think everyone thought they needed another year or two to really start to gel because they are a lot. They're a very young team.
Well, they tried to build a defensive team and they built an offensive team.
I know. Well, yeah, I know because their defense sucks, so they're always playing from behind, which leads to fantasy goodness, which is what we cash in on here. So no, it's not a bad play. It's not one of my favorite plays of the week.
What is one of your favorite plays of the week?
I'll tell you who my second favorite play of the week is the second best wide receiver off of that non-championship winning LSU team. That is Odell Beckham Jr. And that's right, the second best wide receiver off that LSU team. He is going against the New York Jets. And you know what the best receiver on that LSU team did against the New York Jets last week? He caught 13 catches for 165 yards and a touchdown. That's what Jarvis Landry did last week. And now ODB gets to go against this team.
So you get like 6 for 40.
And he's half as good. ODB is half as good as Jarvis Landry. So you're guaranteed for 82 and a half and half a touchdown. Mark my words. And you know what ODB gets? He gets a Darrelle Revis-less New York Jets secondary this week.
Not that matters.
Not that matters anyway, because Darrelle Revis has not been the Darrelle Revis that some people have been raving about for 12 years. But without him, it's even more fantasy goodness. So 4 weeks ago, ODB is averaging 16 targets a game the last 3 weeks. The last game that he had single-digit targets was 4 weeks ago. You know what he did on those 9 targets? He got 3 touchdowns. So last week he had 9 of 18 for 142 yards and a touchdown against the terrible Washington Redskins. He's going for 8,900, 9,400 on the duel. He's the third most expensive wide receiver on the board. But this just has all the makings for just a 200-yard game, in my opinion, because it's Jets-Giants. It's always a very highly touted game. It's not the Snoopy Bowl, but ODB is going to go off. This is going to be one of those 200-yard, 2-touchdown games.
Thanks, Joel, for bringing to the people the obvious. I really appreciate that in the show.
I make you money.
Yeah.
Sorry, I can't come to
play Julio Jones.
TJ Yeldon.
Play Antonio Brown. ODB is good. And yes, there's no Revis. And I think a really interesting thing. I tease, of course, but
I digress.
I digress. I think a really interesting side note that I saw was that they're already talking about getting rid of Antonio Cromartie, who is their top corner this week. The Jets' top corner against ODB. So that can't be good. I don't know if that's going to ignite him to play better because it doesn't matter how well you... Well, first of all, I don't think he can. But second of all, it's ODB, and he's already had... some people are already saying his catch last week was one of the best catches ever, too. I think it's a little much. It was a fantastic catch. Maybe catch of the year, I'll throw that out there, but... When I saw his catch against the Cowboys last year, I stood up from the couch and was saying that might be the greatest catch I've ever seen, as Collinsworth was saying it, as I'm sure many of you were saying too.
I'm just tired of watching it on Madden.
I'll watch it all the time. It's fantastic catch.
Everybody does it now.
But yeah, so ODB, a really safe, high-end play. But and to Joel's credit, yes, you have to play some. We always pick low-end guys. When of course, like, you have to highlight the high-end guys too, because if you spend all this money, your low-end guys do great, and then you play a high-end guy that has, like, say for example DeAndre Hopkins last week, who had like 5 catches for 33 yards, and it was against the Saints. You're like, holy shit, he was gonna blow it up, and didn't. Then it doesn't matter how well your low-end guys play.
But the thing is, like, you have $60,000 of salary to spend, and if you're going to spend $3,500 on C.J. Anderson, you're going to spend $3,600 on David Johnson. You've got a lot of salary, so you've got.
So where's that money going?
Exactly. I mean, and if you're not going to pay for Tom Brady, so if you're going to spend, you're going to spend it for top 10 quarterback, you're going to have 2 number 1 high-end wide receivers on your team, just because you don't want to leave $5,000 in salary on your bench.
So you cool with playing Eli this week then?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Just checking your
ODB
your Eagles.
ODB will throw to himself. He will run 60 yards and catch it.
And I'm gonna go ahead and make my last pick here. With a
use your words.
Yeah, I'm trying to phrase this the right way. A slot receiver with an aged quarterback, and that's T.Y. Hilton. DraftKings 5,700, FanDuel 7,300. When we started the season, we saw Andrew Luck as one of the top quarterbacks in the game, and we saw his number 1 receiver, T.Y. Hilton, setting the world on fire as he did last year. Had a fantastic season last year. However, things don't always go as planned. And when Hasselbeck took the reins, we also assumed that T.Y. Hilton would be left in the cold. Dante Moncrief has been successful. He's done a lot to his tight ends, to Hasselbeck. And so that was the end of the T.Y. Hilton phenomenon. However, T.Y. Hilton showed up last week in the form of 2 touchdowns. And this week is playing at Pittsburgh, and they're terrible secondary. How terrible are they? They're the terrible secondary that let Russell Wilson throw for 5 touchdowns, which he's never done in his whole damn career. Pittsburgh is 25th versus receivers. Who's Seattle's number 1 receiver? Yes, Doug Baldwin. What did Doug Baldwin go for? 6, 145, and 3 touchdowns. He has 3 touchdowns. Yes, one of them was an 80-yard reception. But even if you take that away, he still had a solid game. And here we go, T.Y. Hilton's there. As I said, Moncrief and the tight ends are getting looks, so that means the Pittsburgh Steelers cannot sleep on those players. Hilton will still get his targets. In fact, throughout this year, he's the 12th targeted receiver in the NFL, so still getting plenty of targets. I like T.Y. Hilton this game basically because I like Ben Roethlisberger and Antonio Brown and Martavis Bryant. And because the Steelers are going to put up a ton of points. And you're getting T.Y. Hilton for basically a song, 5,700 in DraftKings, 7,300 in FanDuel. You know he's going to get 10 targets. You know half of those are going to be deep. And if he catches 2 or 3 of those, he's basically paid his price. I expect T.Y. Hilton to more than cover his price and be a fantasy asset to your team.
Pretty sure you just called an audible, because I'm pretty sure that you did not say you were going to talk about T.Y. Hilton. However, I want nothing to do with any offensive player on the Indianapolis Colts whatsoever in this game or in any game for the rest of the season. Yes, Matt Hasselbeck is undefeated, and he's done an admirable job as a game manager. But no, come on. If you've watched a Colts game, you don't want anything to do with any of these guys. This team, if they put up 21 points, they considered a good week. And that is not a good week for an offensive team, an offensively built team like the Indianapolis Colts. Moncrief has been a bust. He had 3 good weeks when Hilton was hurt. Hilton has had maybe a good week. Last week was his best week of the season. And I don't trust a 40-year-old quarterback being able to get the ball to their deep threat. No. The Colts, really? No. Get out of here.
Well, let's see. Moncrief last week had 8 catches for 114 yards on 9 targets. So that's pretty good. And then T.Y. Hilton had 6 catches for 95 yards and 2 touchdowns on 12 targets.
CLWS. Do we all know what that stands for, boys and
Yes.
girls?
Yeah.
Chasing
last
week's stats.
But against one of the best defenses in the league, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So
that took them from 10th to 14th.
it did. Thanks, my Hasselbeck, game manager. But all I'm saying is that they're finding a way to win. They're finding a way to win through the air as well, because Frank Gore's done diddly squat, even though we thought that he was going to be carrying
Boom
the rock
Heron,
for
here
them.
we come.
Yeah, actually, we didn't mention that, but Boom Heron, is he even on DraftKings or Kindle? I haven't looked, but yeah, take a look at that. This is your extra burn coverage here. Boom Heron for a song, maybe a sneaky play into Bradshaw.
That's right.
Shocking, Bradshaw out for the year.
Wide receiver segments, and we're talking running backs.
Yeah, that's bird coverage for you. We got anything else going on this wide receiver?
I'd like to talk about kickers right now.
Yeah, let's talk about it. You know who's a great kicker? Morton Anderson.
Morton Anderson,
This
what's
guy.
your kicker?
Play Morton Anderson in FanDuel this week. We don't get to play FanDuel. I'm sure he's cheap.
You know who's a really good kicker? David Akers. Wait, no, it wasn't.
No, he wasn't. No.
He missed 3 field goals in the play.
Martin Gramatica was pretty good until he injured
Automatica,
himself.
Grammatica.
Injured himself celebrating.
Automatica,
Just like
Gramatica.
his brother. Anywho, here we are. End of. I'm just gonna flatline this wide receiver segment, bird coverage, week 13. I'm Curtis,
Too many more kickers. I'm Joel.
and if we didn't scare you away, we still hope to see you next week.
On the couch.
Bye.